Flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean.
My heart breaks to think of the unimaginable pain suffered by all the families. There are no words which can ease that pain.
I just want the truth to come out with evidence.
We're not searching for a needle in a haystack. We're still trying to define where the haystack is.
And whenever there is hope, even if it's against hope, we will do whatever it takes.
For the families, this was the day despair turned to fury. On Monday, they got the news they had feared most, as the Malaysian Prime Minister confirmed that all 239 passengers and crew of flight MH370 were no longer just missing, but presumed dead.
It is therefore with deep sadness and regret that I must inform you that according to this new data, flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean.
Today, in Beijing, overwhelming grief was accompanied by anger. Family members of some of the 153 Chinese victims, many of whom heard the news via text message, targeted the Malaysian embassy. Public protests are rare in Beijing, and this one appears to have caught the authorities by surprise. But even with scores of police, there was no containing the family's grievance. They marched on the embassy demanding a meeting with the Malaysian ambassador. Eventually, they were let in to ask one simple question.
Truth. That's the only demand.
What do you think the truth is?
I cannot guess anything with no evidence. I'm not like the Malaysian government. I will make no suggestions, something like that. I just want the truth to come out with evidence.
What do you think the Chinese government can do to help your case?
Oh, they will help us to negotiate with the Malaysian government to press them, give us the truth as soon as possible, like they already do last night.
The loss of flight MH370 is an international disaster. And in Australia, relatives are grieving too. Queenslanders Rod and Mary Burrows were on their way to Beijing for a 3-week holiday. They leave behind 3 children, including son Jaden.
Our family is trying to come to terms with this terrible tragedy. We dearly love and will miss our mum and dad. The love and compassion that they shared and their priority of putting their family first will help us get through this together.
So many questions in the mystery of MH370 have yet to be answered. The authorities at least believe they know what ultimately happened. The Boeing 777's journey ended in the southern Indian Ocean. Malaysian Airlines reached its conclusion based on evidence data provided by British company Inmarsat and the UK Accident Investigation Branch. According to data gleaned from satellite handshakes with the plane, sometime between 12:19 and 1:15 GMT on the morning of March the 8th, it dropped into the sea. The families will not rest until they know how, why, and most urgently, where it crashed. Finding that answer will have to wait at least another 24 hours. Bad weather in the search zone made it too dangerous for the international fleet of aircraft to take the 1,500-mile journey southwest from Perth into the search zone. Grounded until the weather clears, the search parties were left to contemplate the scale of their task.
We're not searching for a needle in a haystack. We're still trying to define where the haystack is. So that's just to put it in context. You're seeing a multinational effort going on. It is difficult for HMAS Success to, in these weather conditions, be able to find small bits of debris that is washing around in the southern Indian Ocean at the moment.
The search zone is narrowing, but only relatively. All possible crash sites to the north of Malaysia have been ruled out, but a vast area remains.
My only problem is giving them answer to the question that they really want to know, which is where their loved ones and the MH370 is. And until we can find the debris, and then we can confirm that the debris is from MH370, it is very difficult for me to have a closure for the families. But what I have indicated to them yesterday, and it's been consistent with the position of the Malaysian government, is that we will do everything within our powers, and this time with 26 other nations, to reduce that search area and narrow it. And as I stated in my statement earlier, by not focusing on the southern corridor, we have in fact narrowed the area from millions of nautical miles to hundreds, though it's still a huge task. But the narrowing of it, hopefully, and I'm an optimistic person, and whenever there is hope, even if it's against hope, we will do whatever it takes.
On Monday, teams crisscrossing the search area reported separate sightings. First, the Chinese, flying sorties out of Perth, reported seeing a white rectangular object. Then, in a dramatic development, the Australians recorded another sighting of two items, one circular and grey-green in colour, the other rectangular and orange.
We're looking for debris in the water, and we've sighted a number of objects both on the surface and beneath the surface, visually as we flew over the top of them.
You've done a number of flights. Have you come anywhere close to seeing as much as you have on this one?
We've done, this is our third flight in the area, fourth for the crew, and no, we haven't had this level of activity for any of the flights. No, it's been the first time we've actually certified that we've seen something and got photographs using our camera operator up the front of anything in the area.
The obvious question is, are these parts of the missing plane?
It's unsure. There's no real way we can classify that on the aircraft. All we provide is possible, the possibility that they are, as well as a location, a time, and we mark those objects. So that's all we can provide. The analysis will be left to the photographers, the image analysis once we land, as well as HMAS Success once she steams into the area and hopefully retrieves some of these objects.
HMAS Success is currently the only vessel in the search area.
The ship's company are acutely aware that there are families of 239 people who are on board that aircraft, and we see it as our role to do whatever we can to provide them the answers that they deserve.
But this is an international effort, and help, including from Royal Navy survey ship HMS Echo, is on the way. While they look, the families wait. As the search for flight MH370 continues, the Malaysian authorities' crisis communications strategy has come into sharp focus. The families of the 239 passengers and crew want answers, and so does the rest of the world. But from the start, the Malaysians insisted they would reveal only what they know, and and not speculate on what they don't.
On my part, I've always been persistent and consistent about trying to locate the plane based on corroborated and verified information. And you know, we've gone through a whole journey from the South China Sea to the Malacca Straits, right down to the northern-southern corridor, now to the southern corridor. And it involves a very complicated process of looking at satellite, radar, military, civil, primary, secondary, vessels, investigation, and all sorts of leads that needs to be corroborated at that particular point in time.
Even so, sending a text to the families telling them their loved ones had perished in the Indian Ocean caused hurt and anger. A fact now recognised by the airline.
Our sole and only motivation last night was to ensure that the incredibly short amount of time available to us, the families heard the tragic news before the world did.
And then there was this. Relatives of missing passengers forcibly removed from a news conference in Kuala Lumpur. Undignified scenes like these turned fear and frustration to anger and suggested a lack of control.
They have disseminated information, timely information, to the media, and the problem was whether it's been accurate information or not, that's something else. They've contradicted themselves. A lot of the information has proved inaccurate, but they didn't set up that information flow directly to the families real time, given by high-ranking, high-level teams, which they should have done, and that's how we know they were not prepared for any sort of disaster.
What the victims' families have been told is that beyond reasonable doubt, there are no survivors. But closure can only come when the plane is found. Sky's David Bowden looks at the challenges.
The search area is all the way down there, about 1,500 miles off the coast of Perth in Australia. They've been working there for a few days now, but it all stopped because the weather closed in. We had a level 7 category of storm down there, 2 off the maximum of 9, which meant they had waves of 6 to 9 metres high. Clearly, that was difficult for the boats. It also meant problems for these planes that are flying low over the surface. They couldn't get down there. Now, why are we talking about this search area at all? Well, that's where, Daniel, you come in. Remember, we had the Inmarsat satellite several days ago coming up with these pings, these electronic handshakes. Yep. And then we had, a couple of days ago, the direction of this satellite telling them that they were moving all the way down here to this search area. First of all, Daniel, tell us how they did that.
Each plane under the Inmarsat constellation has a unique frequency. It's a defined frequency within a certain width. So each plane travelling along the southern corridor will have a slight frequency change in the signal. So when they disseminate the information, they can look at all the registered flight paths and say, OK, that is MH370's frequency, and they can hone the system into that one and say, OK, at 1451 it was in this position because we had this frequency and it was doing the handshake to say, hello Mr. Satellite, I'm here, as it were. The haphazardness with the half a signal was that could mean anything. Did the plane...
Let me just explain that half a signal, because that is new news, isn't it?
It is.
We knew we'd had these pings, then we're told at this morning's news conference there's a half a ping, whatever that is, sometime after we thought the plane was down. What's a half a ping and how could it happen?
Half a ping can be a magnitude of things, but to me it's basically the radar signal got cut off halfway through the system. It told itself that it's there, but kind of didn't transmit the full picture. So it might have included height, bearing of direction, and the timestamp. But if it's cut off halfway through, they might only just have a bearing, so they have no exact position on that plane.
Clearly we're not in the Indian Ocean and we're not close to this investigation, but do we think that's significant, or is it just a blip, if you like?
It might just be an admiration at the total cost, but AIIB, I believe, are investigating it. So they've got multi-million-pound computer simulations that should be able to determine whether it is a relevant piece of info or whether it's nothing. There isn't enough info from that handshake to say or determine where that plane actually was at that time.
So the challenge now is to find what's left of the plane in the most extreme conditions. It calls for a highly specialised, skilled operation.
You really need to be very, very close to that acoustic pinger to be able to hear it. To give you an example, if we're talking 4,000 meters of water, you can't be on the surface and hear it. You need to be, a few hundred meters away and possibly, a few hundred meters to either side. No more than 1,500, 2,000 meters. Beyond that, you probably won't hear it. The TPL is normally deployed from oceanographic or research vessels, towed from a very long steel cable on a winch, a hydraulic winch that can put it down at the bottom and pick it up to make sure that it doesn't hit anything. And the operators control that and try to fly it. We call it flying it, very close to the seabed, as close as possible. The speed is very slow because that cable in the water has a great amount of hydrodynamic drag on it. You can't go fast doing this. You're generally towing at a couple of knots. And you're trying to be as quiet as possible, trying to have the best weather conditions as possible so that instrument is not moving up and down in the water column as possible, as minimal as you possibly can. And you're just very, very quietly listening for that pinger. And all you need is a handful of pings to say, we're there. And then once you've got that location, then you triangulate it by several different turns around it and get as many pings as you can on the object.
The question of why the aircraft went down is still unanswered and may prove as challenging as the search. Early suspicion fell on the flight's captain, 53-year-old Zahari Ahmad Shah. He's a vastly experienced pilot with more than 18,500 flying hours under his belt. The first officer was Farik Abdul Hamid, 27, and joined Malaysian Airlines in 2007. He was fairly new to this model of aircraft, a Boeing 777-200. This CCTV shows the two men going through security on their way to board the flight that evening. We're told they did not specifically request to fly together. Police have started searching their homes, talking to friends and neighbours. They found this flight simulator in Captain Zahari's house. Investigators say that some data on it has been deleted. Could the flight manifest hold the answers? Investigators are scrutinising all 239 names. More than 2 weeks after the plane's disappearance, we're still learning more about the men, women and children who were on board this flight. Chandrika Sharma was heading to Mongolia via Beijing to attend a United Nations meeting on food and agriculture. Her husband and daughter are inconsolable. The youngest passenger on the flight was 2 years old, the oldest 76. 7 of them were children who will never reach their 5th birthdays. 26-year-old Yu Wen Chow is originally from Mongolia. He moved to study business at Hull University in England. He'd gone home to see his girlfriend. Muktesh Mukherjee and his wife, Zaimal Bai, had been on a beach holiday together in Vietnam. Their 2 young sons were waiting for them at home. 15 different nationalities were flying to Beijing that night. Among them 153 from China, 38 from Malaysia, 5 Indians, 4 French, 3 from the United States. 2 Iranians on board became initial suspects but seem to have been ruled out. 35-year-old Ju Kun is a stuntman who was due to start work on a new series for Netflix in Malaysia next week. He was on his way to Beijing to see his 2 children. Bob and Kathy Lawton are from Springfield Lakes in Australia. They have 3 daughters, who are described as doting grandparents. Paul Weeks is a mechanical engineer. He accidentally left his wedding ring and watch behind him at home when he travelled to Mongolia for work. Hadrian Watrelos on the right is 17. Zhao Yan on the left, 18. They were on their way to school in Beijing. At every turn, the mystery of flight MH370 has defied simple explanation. Each new lead, every new sighting, each new data set has posed more questions than it has answered. So the search goes on land and sea. For the relatives, now mourning their loss, there will be no easy conclusion.